Sure. My name's Neil Cocker. I'm an entrepreneur. I run an e-commerce and merchandising platform called DizzyJam, which has been running for a few years now. And I'm also involved with Cardiff Start, which is a network of digital and tech startups in the sort of Cardiff region. And so Cardiff Start just came out as a handful of conversations and has now resulted in a community of several hundred people. We're worth at least £100 million to the local economy, and the tech startups are worth 8% of the UK GDP. So a very, very important sector. But because we're quite cutting edge, government isn't always well positioned to support and help those kind of industries because government moves slowly and these sectors move quickly. So I do think Welsh Government can do more, if I'm honest. As Ken Poole, who's Head of Economic Development at Cardiff Council, said at our launch event, a lot of it's just about applying a drop of oil at the right places to allow those things to move smooth. Public sector's got to let the entrepreneurs lead, and to a certain extent Welsh Government, Cardiff Council, whatever, have kind of just got to clear the barriers out of the way. Find more expertise in Wales for my type of business, because there doesn't really exist. We don't have a second generation of web and tech entrepreneurs like they do in London and whatever, because actually all our experienced successful entrepreneurs here are from manufacturing, financial services, legal services, just the nature of the economic makeup of the history of Wales. Very much sits within that Silicon Valley mould. If I go to Business in Focus with that idea, as I have done, invariably you're going to be sat opposite an ex-accountant, ex-manufacturing MD, whose eyes are going to move in different directions when you start talking about developing the code you need to integrate with Twitter, or So there's a guy called Paul Thomas, I think, who wrote an article called "Building Silicon Valley Where You Are" or something. It's basically about how you create tech clusters outside of Silicon Valley. And he said you need two types of people. There's a whole bunch of other circumstances, but you need two types of people, and he calls them rich guys and nerds. So basically you need nerds to build the stuff, you need rich guys to invest in it. We've got the nerds, but we've got the wrong type of rich guys. That's pretty much bluntly it. And so if there's not the right type of rich guys, we either need to bring more of them here, that's a PR exercise, or the government needs to find ways of releasing funding. And like I was saying earlier, I think that's difficult because a lot of that money's European and it comes with certain kind of restrictions on it. Like Digital Development Fund is great, but it's match funding. So if I want to go and get £100,000 from Digital Development Fund, I need to find 100 grand from somewhere else, and that's not easy because I'm still having to go back to the same dudes in suits who made their money manufacturing plastic in Merthyr or whatever that is. So recent access to finance and expertise are the two key areas for startups like ours. I think there's more to be done about attracting the right type of investment to Cardiff, to what we're doing, and it just doesn't feel like it's important here. Up until 3 months ago, if you Googled Cardiff startups, the top 3 results were my blog, which is it's great for my ego, but it's terrible that, if you were looking to invest locally or looking to set up a startup in Cardiff which has got low cost of living or whatever, you'd look and go, they're just some madman ranting. Why would I start there? Actually, tech startups are worth more to the internet as a whole is worth more to the British economy than manufacturing, construction, education. Some very, very serious sectors that are given huge amounts of airtime. Then I think that would give people a lot more confidence. It just doesn't seem to be on the radar. It's kind of feels like you've got a bunch of middle-aged politicians, civil servants who are like, well, that's Facebook and Twitter, that's just for fun. And in fact, actually, through e-commerce, internet infrastructure, we're spending, I think, by 2016, it's going to be £225 billion a year. I mean, it's literally going to be 13-14% of the UK economy. So it kind of feels wrong that we're not taking it really, really seriously. I often make a comparison between Cardiff and a city in America called Boulder in Colorado. There's a lot of comparables with Cardiff: the size of the city, great university, quality of life, they get across town in 10 minutes, all that kind of stuff. But they don't see their location as a challenge or an excuse. They've just found, and there's a bunch of different reasons. There's a high quality tech startup accelerators there. There's some good private equity investors there and whatever, but they're not insurmountable. There's no reason why we can't be the Boulder. I mean, if you ask anybody in America what are the top tech startup cities in America, they'll go San Francisco, New York, Boulder. And it's like, Boulder? I'd heard of it, but it's just like I could barely point it out on the map. Well, I think there's things, the things that have really worked over there are things like having the accelerator. So an accelerator it's kind of like an incubator, but at the end of the, it's a very short boot campy style thing where at the end of it you're looking to get investment. So incubators, broadly speaking, is kind of an experiment that seems to have failed in Wales. They tend to just end up being cheap office space. Whereas with an accelerator, you'll go in and you'll be there for 3 months and you'll be subjected to some of the brightest minds of your generation. And at the end of it, you will have kind of been, your startup idea will have been completely boot camped. You won't have slept for 3 months and you'll have been pushed to the limit and your business plan will be torn apart a million times and built back up. And at the end of it, you'll kind of pitch and a group of investors will go, yeah, great, here's some money if you cut the mustard. So a guy called Brad Feld, who's one of the most famous venture capitalists in America, he's very key to the Boulder, Colorado story. He runs an accelerator there that churns out so many great top tech startups. But he wrote a blog about what I was planning on doing in Cardiff. Because he writes a lot about startup communities. He's literally written the book on startup communities. And his blog was entitled, or his blog post was entitled, "There are startup communities everywhere, even Cardiff." And it was just like, I'm not expecting this guy to know Cardiff very well. He lives in Boulder, Colorado. But that's his impression of the capital city of Wales, that we live in a kind of entrepreneurial vacuum. And I was tweeting with a tech startup journalist in France, and she tweeted me back saying, "There are startups in Cardiff?" ! MySpace is being built on Cathedral Road. Nobody knows this. Half of MySpace is built on Cathedral Road. The other half's built in Silicon Valley. I think actually then is the message I try and instill in the young people I've worked with is actually, if there's ever a time for you in your life, you're living with 3 other people, your rent is like £7 a week, you can live on baked beans, go and make mistakes, go and learn, because actually by the time you get to 30, that stuff becomes increasingly difficult. You almost need to target all the support at school and university age, so by the time they graduate, because actually once you're 21, it doesn't matter whether you're 21 or 41, you're out there, you're in real life, you're doing it, and you've got no support umbrella. No, if I'm bluntly honest, I wasn't aware of it. So I know that they had an entrepreneurship action plan a few years ago, but I wasn't aware there was a very specific youth entrepreneurship strategy. Yeah. If I knew about it, I'd bung it in our Facebook group with 300 members, and we got 700 followers on Twitter or whatever, and we got regular meetups, and so if a handful of those people know about that stuff, then of course it filters through the network slowly. At government level, they'll say, we speak to SMEs and entrepreneurs all the time, and actually what they mean by an SME is a factory that employs 55 people. What they don't mean is a 2-man web development agency. So actually their definition of SME and ground level is actually very, very different. Speaking to Henry, who runs Admiral, it's not always the most representative way of saying we speak to business in Wales, actually. So, I'm not expecting that Edwina Hart spend 3 days a week chatting to one-man bands and, that kind of thing. But I get a sense that there's a big disconnect a lot of the time between Welsh Government and proper ground level entrepreneurs. And it's not just about going to a Chamber of Commerce lunch that's got the Director General of Barclays Bank speaking at it. It's come to the launch of Cardiff Start, where there's 200 people who want to change the face of how we do digital and technology startups in Wales. Where you're going to meet guys with green hair who are making the sort of websites and apps that are going to change the way we all live and work in the future. Easy pickings. If you support some of these guys are going to go on to put Cardiff on the map. So when you're in Sydney or Bangalore or San Francisco and someone says, oh yeah, Cardiff, and you go, well, yeah, it's the guys who built this app that you use on your iPhone every day. If you speak to anybody in the tech startup world, you go, well, they'll be able to tell you that, like, well, Berlin, you go, well, Berlin, great, SoundCloud, everyone knows SoundCloud, everyone uses SoundCloud, Berlin, that's, you know, so we don't have a champion yet, we don't have that kind of one big success story, and we need that. If we get that, and we can start saying, you know, then all arguments against Cardiff being a good place to start a business are null and void. The thing is, you can have first-time entrepreneurs at the age of 45 who will probably have the same challenges as those and have the same confidence issues, and you know, so I don't know, maybe it's a bit of an arbitrary delineation of age. You know, actually, I know guys who are resigning at the age of 42 to start their first business, and they will have as much, you know, I know 22-year-olds who were starting their first business straight out of university who have the same levels of confidence. You know, so I understand there's a tension between the political and what's actually the most economically effective thing to do, you know, because actually if you wanted to get the most bang for your buck on pretty much any project, you probably spend almost all of it below the M4, you know, Newport, Cardiff, Swansea. No, it's a tricky question to answer, but yeah, generally in terms of Cardiff Start, in terms of the majority of people that come to our events and engage with us, rightly or wrongly, white, male, young, that's it.